everybody, welcome to Harborside History. I'm Karen Bloom, Manager of Education and Programming for Historic Charleston Foundation, and today our topic is Charleston Race Week. Now, Race Week has been around for a really long time in Charleston, in February, and also, don't forget that February is Black History Month, although, of course, we agree with our friend Joe McGill, every month is Black History Month. So, we have a lot to talk about today for Race Week, and joining me to help me talk about it is Director of Museums Grahame Long.
Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Great, so where are we, Graham? What's going on?
We are in Hampton Park, northern part of the city near the Citadel campus, and it is a beautiful green space that many people of the Charleston public enjoy. Have you been here in the second half of the 18th century, or certainly the first half of the 19th century, this would have been a very busy place, especially this time of year, because you would have been in the infield of what was known as the Washington Racecourse.
Great, so we're not standing on the racetrack. That's something important to note, and this wasn't always called Hampton Park. It's Washington Racecourse, and where approximately was the actual racecourse if this is the infield? And I want you all to think about the Triple Crown and seeing the revelers in the infield and the grandstand, because there were grandstands here as well. So can you give us a little lay of the land?
It's hard to tell nowadays. There's very little left of what there are really not many geographic hints as to where the racecourse physically was, other than Mary Murray Boulevard circumvents this entire park. It's a one-way road. It's one lane. It's used primarily by runners and bikers and strollers nowadays. But that 1 mile loop is essentially a fairly rough footprint of where the actual horse track was. So a sizable place.
Yeah, this is a big infield.
There's a few markers around, obviously, that visitor can certainly stop and read. But nowadays, with the landscaping and the pond and the afterlife that this place had certainly after the Civil War and into the 20th century, most of what, in fact, if not all of what you and I would consider, or what anyone would consider part of a racetrack is long gone.
There would have been some buildings, though, again, footprints aren't here anymore, but there would have been a grandstand and then a citizen's stand, I understand.
Yeah, so this being a racetrack, there was, this is a spectator sport, and so there would have been many grandstands around. Now, some of those were for, VIPs or horse owners, certainly.
Oh, okay.
Goes without saying. Yeah. A ladies' grandstand.
Designated for just the ladies.
A citizen's grandstand. And certain areas for just tourists. Interestingly, tourists were not charged or out-of-town visitors maybe were not charged to come to Race Week and visit and watch the festivities.
Oh, okay. I love that. That's a little bit of that famed Charleston hospitality. It's been around a long time, I guess.
Yeah, tourism is not a new thing in the last 150, you could almost say 200 years.
So, Race Week in Charleston historically, and we're talking about the late 17 and early 1800s, it was kind of a party, wasn't it?
It's a big party.
Okay.
The town essentially closes. Schools are closed, businesses are closed. This is the primary focus of the Charleston economy for that entire week.
So Charleston was doing Mardi Gras before Mardi Gras.
You could say that. Yeah,
okay.
Just horses.
All right. And so everybody in town is enjoying this to sort of their own economic level. The wealthy are really...
The wealthy are all in. They've been planning this for a long time. This is a huge event for certainly those with property in the race, meaning horses, or perhaps they're enslaved, but also to the middle class, the lower class. This was a wide open area, and you can see the large real estate that's here. Everyone could find a place here for the most part.
Sure. And people came from all over. I mean, planters from the upstate are coming, and then, of course, wealthy folks from further afield, especially if they want to enter a horse in the race.
That's correct.
Yeah. But anytime we talk about a little bit of partying, a little bit of idleness on the part of especially wealthy but free European people, then there's always an aspect of the population, of course, who see extra work and extra duties.
It's vital to acknowledge and understand and study the logistics and the hidden details of things like this. We can look at this on the surface and think what a great grand festivity this was. What's it take to put this on? What's it take to construct these places? What's it take to clean up? What's it take to serve these big places? Interestingly, what's it take for the horses side of things? What's it take for the actual sport to take place? That's an entirely new, fascinating aspect of this race week.
Now, there's a really important aspect of Race Week in Charleston, like Graham and I were saying, that's rarely talked about. But to understand it better, we need to understand the origins of the South Carolina Jockey Club. It was started by the wealthy planter class in 1758, and it was the first jockey club in America. Of course, it was popular and it drew people from all over the state and further afield. But the Jockey Club wouldn't have worked without the enslaved individuals who were there to serve it in all sorts of various ways. And the most prominent way that we can point to in the historical record today is through enslaved grooms for the horses and the jockeys who rode in races like the ones that happened here at Race Week in the 18th and early 19th centuries. Now, there is some record of the enslaved grooms, and sometimes we can find extant pieces in museums around town that speak to the enslaved individuals who often we know in historical record in other ways go nameless and occupationless. So I encourage you to check out the other forms of history that you can find here in Charleston that speak to the enslaved jockeys. We'll talk about those in a little bit. The other thing that I should mention is that the South Carolina Jockey Club, as the races continued to become popular, was actually disbanded a couple of times and then reinstated. It was suspended during the American Revolution, but it came back strong in the 19th century. And by the 1850s, it was so popular that the wealthy owners of both horses and people who were sponsoring these events had massive trophies made. And those trophies were awarded to, well, the horses, and sometimes the owners. The people that never got to hoist a trophy were the enslaved jockeys who were doing the work of riding in the races and really coaxing their mounts to the victory. So we're going to examine one of these pieces here in just a moment, but think about the idea of race horses today and horse races today and how the jockeys are not only acknowledged, but rewarded for their hard work and for their skill and knowledge. Just like every other task that enslaved people did here in Charleston and across the country, there is no unskilled labor here. These jockeys were highly trained and highly educated, and they won large purses for the owners of these horses. So the great news is that here in Charleston, Race Week has some historical extant pieces that can be found. At the Charleston Museum, you can take a look at actual silks worn by enslaved jockeys. At the Edmonston Alston House, there are prints of enslaved jockeys riding their horses. And here at the Gibbs Museum, there's actually a trophy cup that was won in a race in 1802, 1803. So we're gonna go inside and take a look. You all set?
Let's go.
So here we are inside the Gibbs Museum of Art with the Jockey Club Trophy Cup. And here to tell us about it today is Gibbs curator Sarah Arnold, and of course, our own Grahame Long. Here they are.
Thank you, Karen. I am here at the Gibbs, one of my favorite places, with one of my favorite people. This is Sarah Arnold, who's been a long time colleague, conspirator, but more important than anything, she's my good friend, and thank you for making time to do this.
Thank you.
We're here with, well, in one of my favorite museums, but also one of my favorite pieces, which is on loan from the John Rivers collection here at the Gibbs that you can come see. A very large, which can get mistaken as a punch bowl, but actually this is a trophy cup, which English made. You can tell by the British hallmarks on the backside here, which tell us a lot of things, but more importantly, the date mark back there, which says that this piece was made in 1803. So that makes sense because even though there's a lot of local Charleston silversmiths making and producing tablewares and the like, there's also plenty of English imports coming in as well. Another great piece that I like about this is a lot of people, when they hear the word silver, they automatically think forks and spoons and cups and things that you have to polish before your Thanksgiving dinner. Not entirely true. What's even a greater category, a more interesting category, if you ask me, is what we might call silver beyond the table. Like, what is all this, like sword hilts, gun parts, trophy cups? And to tell us a little bit about the magnificent history of this piece and why it's so important to this region, Sarah, when does this come in? What research have y'all done about it?
Well, yes. Well, first I should say we're very grateful to have this on loan to the museum. It's part of a 5-year loan from the Rivers collection of decorative arts, and we have a number of pieces of Charleston-made furniture as well as Charleston silver, as Grahame mentioned. There are several English pieces of silver in the collection as well that we have on display, which Charlestonians would have collected as well, particularly when they were traveling abroad. This very grand cup was awarded after the 1802 race at the Jockey Club here in Charleston to General McPherson. His horse was the winner of that year. This cup would have been made in celebration of that particular event. And you can see it has these fantastic sort of serpentine handles that you could hoist this trophy with. It's quite detailed. It has a nice engraving across the front and includes, you can tell this is part of a horse race just by some of the decorative elements that you see on the cup itself. This would have been made after the race, not necessarily something that was awarded to you directly after the event. It was carefully made and was part of the history of the family for a number of years. So it's got this cat finial at the top. We're still investigating what that relates to, but perhaps part of a family crest or some sort of representation of the family. We also have a wonderful piece in the Gibbes collection that is located nearby entitled The Wreck of the Rosenbloom, which was a beautiful relief sculpture that was made and dedicated to General McPherson after his death in a shipwreck in 1806. So it kind of connects all of these art elements to some of these family histories right here in this corner of the Gibbes.
The interesting point that you made that this isn't something that would have been sort of off the rack, so to speak. This is customized for the family, for the winner of that particular race week. Because those English hallmarks that we mentioned, the victory taking place in 1802 and the date mark on this piece being 1803. So this would have been, the commission would have gone back to London, created, and then sent back over. Probably like the cat and the serpent handles, probably some family preferences in there that research will one day uncover, we hope. But just a fabulous, fabulous chunk of them. My trophies never looked like this because I never got any. But in any case, thank you for that. Appreciate it very much.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, that's it for our coverage of Race Week here in Charleston. We'll see you next month. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, give us all your feedback here and on social media, and subscribe. We'll see you next month, and until then, make sure you look around because history is happening every day.